chartered accountants in Australia and the CPA in Australia, they're rewriting their whole training curriculum for accountants around technology because of the risk of analytics, automation, and those sort of things, making many aspects of their roles redundant whilst creating a whole series of new opportunities. As Bhuvan mentioned, there's a lovely article in here from the distinguished people at Cornell about the transformative power of blockchain. And when you read it, it's all about its potential. And I have no disagreement whatsoever with the potential. And my background is hard-ass program management, business consulting, and trying to get delivery done. Are the guys online, and are they okay?
Oh yeah, we missed out. I hope
guys
so.
Online, if you're there, hello. So what I want to do today is I'm going to talk about how, yes, you've got a whole bunch of great research happening. There's some hype. It happens with every technology cycle. I want to talk about how the everyday business pragmatics slow it down. And I'm going to use blockchain and cryptocurrencies as examples and talk about those technologies as well. Some of the bits that I'm going to throw on the table will be challenging, but hopefully it'll be thought-provoking and be a good conversation. Right. Who has not heard of blockchain? Okay, good. We'll get into it. Now, blockchain has been described as the savior for world famine. It's going to fix world famine. Sorry, that's the hype that's out there. Now, there's a difference between blockchain and cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, and we will work our way through that. Now, all blockchain is, at the end of the day, is a database. That's it, with some other add-on features. That is it. What it is, it's a growing list of records secured by encryption, and instead of it all being stored centrally on an SQL database in a data center, it's stored locally and everybody has a copy on their machine. Now, so at the end of the day, that is it. It's a flat ASCII file. It has none of the management overhead and all the capacities and capabilities of a SQL Server database or an Oracle database, but that is it. Now, what happens is existing databases are consolidated or centralized. So what happens is your student records database for all the campuses around here sits in a data center somewhere on 10 servers, and everybody dials in from around the world with access permissions and that sort of thing to get at it. The idea of blockchain is that instead of keeping it in a consolidated form or a central form, a copy is kept locally for everybody who wants to use it. There's a lot of advantage of going down a decentralized distributive approach. There's a lot of advantages on going down a centralized approach. And this is one of the things that's weighing on blockchain. Now, the other bit about blockchain that you need to know is it was designed by a bunch of really smart software guys, really smart cryptography people, and blockchain has really come to the fore by those that hate governments, hate regulations, and want to go off and become independent, and there shouldn't be a large government. Perfectly valid view, no issues there. It comes down to what is pragmatic and what can actually happen. So we'll go through. It uses commercial encryption. It doesn't have its own encryption, it uses commercially available off-the-shelf encryptions, and it's open source. Everybody okay with the words open source? So with Linux, what happens with a Linux operating system, it's open source, everybody agrees to a change, and a change is made. Problem with that process is it's a bit slow, it's a bit unwieldy. Most companies prefer to go to a commercial software vendor, whether it's Microsoft, whether it's Oracle, whoever it is, because it's easier to manage version control, it's easier to control customization and all of those sorts of things. And this, we'll come back to this when we talk about Bitcoin further on. Now, it has all the authentication, there's public keys and there's private keys. Now, it's actually going to cure famine in Africa. What they want to do is they want to have all the records. You, as a poor refugee eating porridge, you will have somehow you will have access to a device. Somehow you will be able to buy food. Somehow that food will arrive, and it's all going to get tracked by blockchain, and it's going to cure world famine. Sorry, it's out there. You can go read that. The fact that how are you going to get the food through the roads? How are you going to bribe the corrupt government officials to get the food there? It doesn't matter. Blockchain is going to fix it. Now, blockchain has private keys and public keys. The private keys are unique to you. 18 months ago, the UK health records were hacked in the UK. Now, the report that was published by the UK Health about 4 months ago on that said the problems was they had a whole bunch of old legacy PCs. They had a whole series of disparate database solutions. They had firewalls that weren't updated and those sort of things. People did an attack, they got in and they stole health records. There was a big stampede around, well, if all of your health records are in blockchain, they're all going to be secure. But the issues around running old systems that need to be updated across a massive sprawling entity, firewalls being hacked because the updates aren't there, they're still there. And what happens at the moment is to get into your health records, there's a username and a password. Okay? Now, what happens is you're going to get a 32-character key. You're on your deathbed. You're going to give that to the doctor, and the doctor's going to be able to access your health records? I don't think so. I'm not saying blockchain isn't useful. I'm not saying it doesn't have a role to play. But it's just not the utopia that people are talking about. Now, with blockchain, you've got the issue of allocation of encryption keys and the management of encryption keys. Who has administered a database? Yeah, what's one of the biggest pains of administering a database?
Resetting passwords.
Yes. Who has access to the database? Role-based access, resetting passwords, trimming log files, and all those sort of things. These issues aren't going to go away. Keith, being the idiot that he is going to forget his password. Keith is going to write down his 32-character encryption key on a piece of paper and put it in his wallet. Yeah. Now, Bitcoins have been hacked because people have lost their 32-bit encryption keys to their Bitcoins. So, sorry, there is a role for all of this, but it's not the magic fits all. Now, when I access a database with a username and password, you have no idea that it's me. I could have gone down the road, put a gun to somebody's head, and got them to yield that information. It's exactly the same. I can steal somebody's blockchain encryption key. Yeah, the Bitcoin exchanges are hacked for encryption keys. Yeah, all the key says is it's like your car. Boovin gives me the key to his car. The car says, yeah, the key to the car. I open the door. It doesn't mean that I'm allowed to drive the car. It doesn't mean that I own the car. It doesn't mean I'm not going to do damage to the car. So it doesn't confirm ownership. All it says is you can access that. Now, the only global program that confirms identity is India's biometric database. For those who are not aware, the Indian government is getting all of its citizens to have retina scans and fingerprints and that sort of thing, and they're compiling a massive database. Sorry, they're not using blockchain. Yep, they're using off-the-shelf, proven commercial applications. Now, what's the biggest risk? There's two biggest risks to this project. One is the data gets hacked and stolen. And secondly, even though I say my name is Bob Smith, and you have my fingerprint and my retina scan, it's really hard to prove where and when I was born. So, now, what happens at the moment is to get information out of the blockchain, you search all of the blockchain records. At the moment, you search a database. So as these blockchain records get bigger and bigger and bigger, it's harder and harder to search for them. So what are they doing? They're actually creating SQL databases to carry the blockchain metadata to improve performance. So hang on, you're wanting to replace an existing proven technology with something that new, that is slower, that is underperforming. Oh, and by the way, to get around its problems, you're skimming off an information source, putting it into existing proven technology, and creating a duplicate information source. Sorry, what time zone am I on? Okay, is this controversial enough for you, or shall I keep going?
Keith, can I ask one quick question?
Please, go right ahead.
Yeah, so I'm the guy ignorant of blockchain for the most part. Yeah, so who is authorized, if anybody, to make changes to the existing, if you want to call it, central database for which everybody has copies?
Oh, what a beautiful question. Congratulations. Can you give this guy a packet of Tim Tams or something?
I have half of one.
So what happens at the moment is, if you have access, say, to all the student records database, you have permissions access that say you can view it, you can change it, but you can only view certain information and that sort of thing. And that's all administered and managed centrally. And the people are paid to do it, and there's roles and responsibilities, and you can sue, and that sort of thing. With the cryptocurrencies especially, and the blockchain, doesn't exist. Now, it's all open source, managed disparately. So one of the arguments that's going to come down the road is, if everybody who has a public key can read everything in the blockchain, I don't want you to be able to do that. This is one of the business challenges that's coming. Has that answered your question? Now, this I stole off the web, and under here there's an accredited source. So what happens is, someone registers a transaction somewhere, it gets added to the blockchain, it goes out to everybody, and everybody says, yep, you've got the right keys, it's valid, it gets added to the blockchain, and gets distributed out to everybody. Everybody has to have the software, and everybody has to be involved in that process. Sorry, I can see problems already. Who's been to Australia? Who's been out past Melbourne and Sydney? Okay, you know it's red desert, no phones, nothing. If you think the Australia Post guy has a problem now on his existing Wi-Fi enabled, satellite enabled phone to just pump a record back to the database in Melbourne, how is he going to pull down an entire blockchain database? I'm not saying it's not going to happen, maybe 5 years down the track. They'll better the technology, but within the next year it's not going to happen.
When you pull down the entire blockchain database, how big is it? How much memory do you need?
This is a great question. And we'll come to this one as we go through. Again, this is some of the pragmatic issues that are going to kick in. Students, have I challenged you enough?
I have a question if you can hear me.
Sorry, yeah, guys online, go ahead.
Yeah, I am. Just curious as to what hash algorithm is used and how blockchain can account for deprecation of hash values such as SHA-1 was by SHA-2 and now the implementation of SHA-3.
Yes, all I can say is that the encryption layered on through the SHA-1, the SHA-2 and the SHA-3 has caused problems. It's caused performance problems, and it has caused incompatibility problems. The other bit, I'm not technical enough to answer, sorry. Is that okay? Right, let's keep going. So, IBM, and I'm not bagging IBM in any particular way. If this was done by Deloitte, I would bag them equally. Has this beautiful one whereby they want to track the entire food supply chain. So you walk into your local deli, scan the barcode, and you see your avocado was in tray 63, came from Australia, humidity controlled along the way, and all of those sort of great things. And they're saying blockchain can do it because everybody can see the ledger and it's all distributed. Great idea. Reality is, there's a whole bunch of problems with that. The reality is, you can do that now without using blockchain. Now, the kiwi fruit. You guys have kiwi fruit, Chinese gooseberries? Kiwi fruit farmers in New Zealand. They put their kiwi fruit in a bin. It's picked by cheap South Pacific labour out in the fields. They put it into trays. Those trays have a barcode on, and they scan it into a database. Those trays then get racked up. There's another barcode on that box. It gets shipped to a destination. They scan the barcode when they're unpacking it, and they put the fruit on display in the shop. All that happens today without blockchain technology. Now, the problems you've got is data entry. Some underpaid South Pacific Islander on $1, well, not quite $1 a day, 15 bucks an hour in New Zealand, has a bad day, doesn't enter the data. It's not going to work. Data integrity issues. Database people, you know all of this to death. I'm not going to talk to you anymore about it. Standards. Unless there's standard protocols for sharing of information, barcodes by definition require a standard on each side for it to work. Where are the standards for blockchain? Where are they? Deloitte wrote a 500-page report 6 months ago saying cryptocurrency is going to be slowed down because there's no standards. Now, who's ever worked on a standards committee? How long did it take you to get a standard?
It was at glacial speed.
Glacial speed. I won't go any further than that. Access to the information and its synchronization. Who was it made the question about access to information and who edits it and that sort of thing? Exactly that. Now, take up and adoption. It took me a minute to work out how to do this with the help of instructor from a guy here. Sorry, you need time to skill people up to do this. Now, you've got to get them skilled. Yep. If you've never seen one of these before, if you're a 15 buck a day fruit picker, now, also, wow, this stuff's got to work outdoors. Rain, wind, salt, sand. One of the biggest problems that the Kiwi pickers had, they had to put their iPads into sealable proof bags and sealable and cases so that when they were dropped, they wouldn't be continuously buying iPads. Blockchain's not going to fix any of this. Yeah? If Oracle was the new software, it wouldn't fix any of these issues. So they're all still there. Now, blockchain makes access easy and storage easier, but the technology all exists to do that. Yeah? The amount of effort it takes to find information on a blockchain and the amount of electricity used makes it uneconomic, and we'll talk about this on Bitcoin especially. You've got all the cost to implement. And blockchain is not a proven technology. Oh, and by the way, you've got to address all the business issues from it. So even with the kiwi fruit guys, they have a kiwi fruit growers group. You've got to get them all to agree. You've got to get the supermarkets to agree. You've got to get the shipping companies to agree. You're not going to do that in 10 minutes. 11, because America's great, maybe, but you're not going to get it done in 10. Okay, now, this leads us into the benefits of adoption versus the cost to change. I'm going to talk about this business integration, and then we'll circle back around to blockchain, and then if we have some more time, we'll talk about organizational change management. So, good old scales. New features, new interfaces, new technology, incumbency, fixing all the data, business rules, all the integration, and everything else. The cost is not the cost to build the new features. This is your cost. You move home, this is the cost to move house. You've got to get the kids into school, you've got to pack everything up, you've got to move it, you've got to throw out your old stuff, you've got to buy some new stuff. That's why you don't move houses as much as perhaps you would like. Now, if the issues are complicated enough for you, or you as a business, imagine let me ask the question the other way around. Which business does not operate as part of a marketplace? You have to. Yeah. So you've got to integrate with the marketplace. So I want to walk through this one. If you just want to make a simple systems change, okay, let's say you roll out a new payroll system in your organization. You may have network and telco issues to address. You may have to put some new computers on your desktop, put new software on the desktop, that sort of thing. You may have to fix up some applications. You may have to migrate the poll rate, the payroll data. You may have to set up a whole bunch of access accounts, that sort of thing. There may be new business rules that have to go with it. You may rationalize your pay scales because they're no longer compatible with the new software. There's a whole bunch of business rules you may have to address. You've got to put various operational frameworks in to make this happen. You've got some standards to fix, you've got some policies to write, you've got some procedures to get organised, you've got processes to fix. You may have some brand issues. You guys are going through a merger at the moment of the two university campuses. You've probably got all of those to address, as well as some brand issues, and you've got to go talk to customers and stakeholders. At the same time, you've got to manage the people, what's happened to your people. You've got to manage your changes in facilities, buildings, that sort of thing. You've got legal contracts to sort out. You may get the auditors involved if you're a government department. You're a bank, you've got regulatory stuff to do. You're Qantas Airlines, you've got a whole bunch of risk and resiliency things to go fix. You've got to manage the cost of it, the cost of change. You may have to fix up your financial systems. It may impact on the products and services that you sell. If you've got it outsourced to vendors, you've got to go manage your vendors. You may have safety and security issues. You may have outsourced operations issues to address. You've got your products and services changes. If you sell through channel partners, you've got to go change your channel partners. I'm sorry, blockchain is not going to fix that. Just as an Oracle database isn't going to fix that. The adoption of Windows 10 is not going to fix that. That is what you have to manage. That is your cost. Okay, so how does a business manage any change? We've all decided we're going to blockchain tomorrow. It's Nirvana, we're going there. First of all, you've got the costs coming in. You've got to meet the demands of your customers. You've got what's happening in the market. You know, the global economy is tanked. You're not going to do it. And you've got legislative issues to go. You've got to get the exec to buy in, and they've got to support it and make it all through. But you've actually got to keep your business running while you undergo the change. You guys are merging with your other campuses, yeah? You've still got to get students in and out of the door. You've still got to feed them. You've still got to get electricity into the building.
So can you highlight the possible legislative changes in the context of blockchains? Only because
yep,
blockchains are a revolution against the government, in my opinion.
Okay, there's two parts to your question. So what happens is, if you read this lovely article, there's this one that says, because you've got everything in these shared ledgers, the regulators can see everything. Yeah? What do you want the regulators to see everything? First question. Now, a lot of the legislation is market specific. So what happens is, if you merging campuses, you've got to manage the privacy of student records. And you've got privacy obligations that you have to meet. Yep.
Let me be more
Yep.
specific. Bitcoins
Yes.
became popular because I could transact
Yep.
without the government overseeing what I'm doing.
Yep.
So the plus part is that I don't pay taxes or commissions, so no taxes to the government, no commissions to the bank, and I can send you as much or as little money as I want. So that was the plus. The minus is that all the ransomware payments are done in Bitcoins. So I guess my question is, out of these 4 change factors, I guess legislation is going to be very interesting because
Yeah.
there is no legislation for blockchains.
This is one of the challenges with blockchain. You have to meet existing privacy obligations.
But there are no privacy obligations in blockchain.
No, sorry. If you use the blockchain technology to track your food distribution, you still have to meet all of the current legislation that you do today. Cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin is a very separate one, and we'll come to that in a minute. But, sorry, you as a university, you have to meet a whole set of obligations. You have to meet a whole set of government reporting. Now, if you're going to move all your student records into blockchain, all those legislative issues still apply. They're not going to go away. Whether blockchain can do it, don't worry about it in this hypothetical. So in this hypothetical, yes, you're going to use blockchain to manage all your student records. You still have to meet all the legislation. So how are you going to control the way each individual student sees their record, each individual professor sees their records, and they update it? So if you're going to continuously add to the blockchain that Keith has drug issues and alcoholic issues and that sort of thing, that's got nothing to do with him being able to do his job and get his master's degree. You still have to meet the legislative issues. We'll come to the cryptocurrency bit in a minute, okay? So you've got to sustain your business, okay? And you've got to manage the risk. There's the risk of not improving your business, and there's the risk of undergoing the change. The bigger and more complex the change, the greater the risk of things going wrong. So how are you all going to move to Bitcoin instantaneously or within 6 months? How are you going to move all these mission critical systems onto blockchain? We'll come to the Bitcoin. You've got to have the capacity to undergo organizational change, yeah? You've got to have resources, you've got to have processes, and you've got to be able to plan it, because you've got to be able to sustain business. The kid that writes an app and just dishes out on Apple Store, and when you log in and you now spend 5 minutes finding out a new feature and finding it how to work, they haven't managed any of this. And that's okay, because there's no material impact. You've got 2,000 people in a call center supporting 3 million customers, and you've made a change that adds 10 minutes of workload to every single person each day. And you've got to manage, you've got to have the capability to undergo the change. So let's keep going through. I want to talk to you about CHESS settlements. Is this an Australian thing? ASX is the Australian Stock Exchange. What happens is you buy and sell shares, stocks. You guys call it stocks. You buy and sell stocks every day in different companies. The banks do it for you. The banks buy it for themselves and for investments, that sort of thing. Now, what happens in Australia, and it happens here, is all the trades go on during the day. At the end of the day, JP Morgan says, right, we've got $10.5 billion worth of trades that we have to settle. The registry for the share trades has to be updated, all the payments have to be sorted out, all the funds sucked out from all the bank accounts to do it. JP Morgan says, oh, sugar, we haven't got 10 billion, we'll borrow 5 billion from Credit Suisse, whilst we wait for 5 billion to come from Goldman Sachs. That's what they do. Okay? Now, what happens is, in Australia, all of the big banks move billions of dollars between themselves each day, and they go to the market to get temporary loans of billions of dollars to cover any shortfalls that they have. And this all happens in a critical window, and I'll show you the information flow in a minute. Now, the banks need to have enough funds to settle, even if they haven't got enough money themselves. So they go to the market to go get it. Does this sound like a complex process with stakeholders, large amounts of money? Oh, and by the way, if it screws up, it's a market event and trillions of dollars get lost. Okay. I'm going to show you this horrible diagram. What you need to take out of it is you need to get an aspirin or Panadol and a glass of water. You've got 3 banks at the bottom. They're all buying and trading shares. They go to the bank in the middle to get extra money, but that bank in the middle also has brought assets on behalf of other people. All of this has to get resolved through the Reserve Bank. It's all got to go through the exchanges and get settled, and all the share registries have got to get updated. Yep. So going back to your one, I'm a Bitcoin person. My Bitcoin, I love it that there's no government involved. Well, how are you going to get all of the shares that you've brought in BHP updated? It goes to a central share registry. Why do you have to have a central share registry? Because you as an individual needs to know who owns what in a company. So hang on, the whole logic of Bitcoin is breaking down already. Anyway, we'll come to Bitcoin. So you've got all these information flows of registry updates, advisors of settlements, payments, reconciliations coming back. Okay? By now you've probably reached for a bottle of scotch because this is what happens, yeah? Now, I automated this in Australia for HSBC. It took us 9.5 months. And I'll show you some stuff in a minute. So, the blockchain advocates are saying it increases settlement times. Well, hang on. How is it going to increase the settlement time? How? Tell me how going to blockchain is going to speed up settlement times, even when it takes longer to search a blockchain than it does using existing sources. Now, the Australian Stock Exchange did a 1.5-year exercise in investigating blockchain. And you can search all of this on the web. They brought a company in America that did some stuff for one of the exchanges in the US, and this is going to be the bee's knees. They're not doing it anymore. They've said, well, we want to use blockchain as a database, but we still want to be the central authority for settlements. Hang on, that defeats the whole point of going to blockchain. And you can have a look at some of the links in there and you can track through it. But let me walk you through this. A simple business impact is if you speed up the settlement period, there are impacts on the profitability of a bank's custody and clearing operations. So why, as a bank, am I going to rush to increase settlement times? Seriously? Right. There is profit on the lending of money. So HSBC gets all the messages coming in, and CBA, its Commonwealth Bank, goes to HSBC and say, whoops, we're $50 billion short. Can you go give it to us because you're bigger than us? And HSBC says, yeah, we'll go to Goldman Sachs and get the 50 billion at X margin, and we'll loan it to you at X margin. Why? Sorry?
X plus Y margin.
Yeah, X plus Y margin, exactly. What is my incentive to move to blockchain? It's not even proven. What is my business incentive to change? Forget blockchain. I go to a SQL database. What is my incentive? Okay, errors in settlements. They're there, okay? They have to be managed through. As a guy operating settlements over my dead body, do you change my system? Yep. Now, blockchain is not going to eliminate all of the current errors that occur. Yeah? Somebody types in the wrong account. Some of the processes are manual and they have a 6 eyes policy where 3 people read off all the digits to make sure all the account numbers are correct. You've got the same issues no matter what you do. By automating the chess settlements, one of the key bits that we took out was having to have 3 people manually check the funds for the allocation to trustees. So HSBC was taking $5 billion from a Goldman Sachs trustee and it was the wrong account. Whoopsie, it's not HSBC that's typing it anymore, Goldman Sachs has given them the wrong account. That still has to get fixed. Okay, so just to cover off a little bit of what we did. We had to revise our link out to the stock exchange. We had to put in a whole bunch of new service to manage the chess automation. We have to update a thing called MQ Messenger. Anybody heard of that? What's MQ Messenger?
So it's a messaging service. So I can put messages on the queue, I can take messages off the queue, and it can be done transactionally.
Okay, we had to make changes to our core banking systems to accommodate what we were now doing. We had to change the alerts and messaging to people. We had to change the GL and change the reconciliations. And we had to make reporting changes. We had to get our stakeholders to verify their own systems. And they had to make their own changes to support automation. Goldman Sachs was a classic, that they were bitching and moaning to HSBC to get it done. One of the biggest things they realised was they had to go off and change their own processes. We're still using the standard messages that the whole market uses. It's not like we're changing the whole market. This is just automation of a manual process for one bank, okay? We had all of our internal process changes. We had to go through custody and clearing, had to change the way we do things. Why? Because settlement was now taking place in 10 minutes instead of 5.5 hours. In those 5.5 hours, they could manually intervene if something had gone wrong. Now they have to wait for the settlements to clear and then rework any problems that have occurred. We did all the usual systems testing and all that good stuff, don't get me wrong, but we ran a live service for 4 weeks solid in test mode. Yeah? We had to get all of our stakeholder banks to sign off each week that it was working with them, and we had to advise the regulator each week of our progress. It's a market-changing event. Now, we had to get approval from the ASX before we commence it. We had to get approval from regulators in 6 countries. Even though this is an Australian thing, because we're touching global banks, we had to get regulatory approvals from 6 countries. We had to do internal, local, regional, global approvals, and we had to get all of our clients to sign off. Sorry, how is blockchain coming in on an example like that? Let's move on. So let me ask you a simple question. Even if blockchain was developed and proven today, and businesses were prepared and able to undergo all the required changes, all of the required standards were implemented, and all the regulatory changes and the restricted information sharing, even if all of that had been fixed, how does all of that information needed for chess get into a blockchain record and managed in a blockchain records? Sorry, it's just not going to happen. If you read this link, you will see a guide to a complete review of blockchain.
You have a question.
Please forgive my ignorance.
No, that's all right.
At the beginning. I thought one of the key assets to blockchain is data integrity. When there's a change made, it can be, if you retroactively change something in a blockchain,
Yep.
then every block after that is now affected.
Yep.
So in my mind, there's no such thing as a pure blockchain system. I think in places where a ledger security or a ledger's integrity needs to be above reproach, then a blockchain is the area where you would really want to go to make sure that that ledger integrity is above question.
Yep.
But it needs to be accessed and managed from a central point so that the data is not
Right.
so
Okay.
difficult
Yep.
to
So
access.
there's 2 points to that. The whole point of blockchain is that it isn't managed centrally.
Right.
And you've just seen with chess settlements, it's never going to work. Right, now your point about the integrity of the database. That is a totally valid point. It's one of the biggest challenges that you have in such a complicated, sprawling system, managing the integrity of the database. But you have not only got who has bought and sold a share, it is who that share belongs to, which entity it is for, the when, the cost, the price. Now, when it's being paid, which currency it's being paid in, has it been paid in full, is it in a custodian trust, all of the regulatory information that goes back, even sending a simple message to say, Credit Suisse pay Goldman Sachs $5 billion, you can't do that by blockchain, you have to do a messaging system, where MQ Messenger comes in. You're absolutely spot on. Blockchain can help secure the integrity of a ledger.
Right. And that was my statement.
And you're absolutely right, but the issue is everything that goes around it. There are systems today that are proven that do secure the integrity of the ledgers. How are you going to control access to all of that using the nirvana of distributed blockchain? And the point that you mentioned is, well, you have to do it centrally. Well, we do it centrally today for a reason, and that undermines the whole premise of going down blockchain. So this is a great conversation. Oh, and by the way, blockchain's not proven yet. This is up, running, and working. We've done ad nauseum the cost to get it done. Oh, and by the way, it takes longer to search a blockchain than it does on the existing technology. So why are you going to do it? That's a rhetorical question. Now, there's a lovely statement on the slides which you can read. Now, a few more minutes before we get into Bitcoin.
Keith, max 10 minutes.
Yeah, sorry. Now, down the column on the left is all the reasons IT projects fail, as done by the IEEE. And it's between 50 to 80% of IT projects fail. Okay? Now, years ago, CEOs were saying, build everything in Java and XML. It never worked. Why? Because you're focusing on the technology and not the problem. If you focus on the problem, it may be that blockchain's the perfect answer. I don't have a problem with that. But at the moment, they're creating all these nirvana machines on blockchain, and it's being driven totally by the technology, and they're solving the wrong problems. And as we've seen, blockchain is that big of something yo big. Okay, blockchain and cryptocurrencies, I'll rattle on. Some lovely Australian money for you there. Now, money is a way to store wealth, exchange, unit of account. Money has no history to it. There's no history of ownership, and there's no proof of ownership. The Bitcoin advocates love this bit. No history of use, no history of ownership, and no proof of ownership. So you have a $1 note, you don't know what's that being used for by the time you get it. Now, what happens is to complete a transaction, you need context, payment details, all of those sorts of things. You buy a car, you hand over your $100 notes. You've got to know the car, it's got to get registered, it's got to get tax on the car, and all of those sort of things. So all of this information has to get tracked somewhere. It's not tracked by the Bitcoins. So how are we doing it? Question. Now, Money laundering is where you make a loss. I deal drugs, I've got 10 grand. I've got to get it cleaned. I accept that somebody's going to take $1 grand out in the system, and I've now got 9 grand. I go off and buy cars and shopping malls with it or whatever. So Bitcoin is brilliant for money laundering. Absolutely. Now, hold that one. So, cryptocurrencies have been around for ages. Bitcoin is an instance of a cryptocurrency that just happens to use blockchain. But you could run cryptocurrencies without using blockchain. Now, who uses their little cards to tap at the deli when they buy milk? Who taps their card when they buy a hamburger at Macca's? Macca's is McDonald's. Yeah? We're almost a cryptocurrency now. The difference is we're backed by governments. Everybody accepts it. There's a guarantee that it's going to be supported. There's no guarantees around Bitcoin. And there are measures in place to stop fraud and to stop you getting screwed. They're not in place with Bitcoin. Now, there's these wonderful Bitcoin exchanges. They buy and sell the Bitcoins for you. They can hold on to the private keys for you if they like. These exchanges are hacked for these encryption keys, the ones in Japan. You've lost all your Bitcoins. You lose the encryption key, you've lost all your Bitcoins. Now, some of the exchanges do the mining, which we'll come to in a minute, but there's no real financial institution of any size, of any real character involved in mining and really involved in Bitcoin. And we'll talk that through. Now, Bitcoin mining is, the way that Bitcoin works is, you run your computer, it cracks an algorithm, it gives you the key, everybody confirms that that's the key for that Bitcoin, and it all goes through. There's a very low rate of success in mining. Why? Because 10,000 people can all run the software and all mine it. There's no competitive advantage other than you write a bit of code to crack the algorithm faster. There's no competitive in it. Now, it's so power hungry to do this. So when they do it in Iceland, yeah, it's a little bit in Russia, a little bit in China, but it can't be done in the West because it's too expensive. Puerto Rico went tax-free. All the Bitcoin people went down to Puerto Rico, held a massive event, say that they were going to build a nirvana for them and that sort of thing. The only reason they went down there was because of the tax rate changes. There's only 21 million Bitcoins. As you go through, it gets harder and harder. So there's no real incentive for major banks to get involved. Now,
Keith, who pays the miners?
Can I answer that one as we go through? So, they set up a futures exchange in Chicago of Bitcoin. And this was going to be the revolutionary, this was Bitcoin coming mainstream, and that sort of thing. Now, all the exchanges do is do all the settlements, all the payments and the reporting and that sort of thing. They don't use any blockchain technologies in their operations. They do everything using all the existing technologies today. Now, Bitcoin is all about bypassing central controls. So the whole concept of the futures exchange defeats the whole concept behind Bitcoin if you're a true Bitcoin advocate. We talked about standards. The ledgers are not distributed. Bitcoin itself uses the internet. Yeah, the Bitcoin enthusiasts on TV are saying it's all about bypassing government. How does the internet work? Through central agencies that manage and control it. All the servers are supplied by horrible corporations. So there's a mass hypocrisy there. Now, Bitcoin exchanges are not getting the take-up. The futures trading is about the price of oranges and guarantee the supply of 5 tons of oranges in 6 months' time at a price based upon climate factors, that sort of thing. With Bitcoin, there's nothing to drive the future price other than pure idiotic speculation. So banks are not rushing to do Bitcoin. Now, Lloyd's in London has created asset insurance for Bitcoin. But the issue is who owns the asset? Because the encryption key just says you have access to that Bitcoin, not that you own it. I could have stolen it from you. I could have beaten you up at the pub and taken it away from you. This has been going for what, about 4 months, 3 months? The first lawsuit has already been lodged over insuring the asset. Now, if you want to gamble, gamble. Now, all the banks globally operate using SWIFT payments and SWIFT messaging. And they've said Bitcoin's going to replace all of that. It was meant to happen a year ago, now it's going to be in the next 18 months. Forget the global standards, forget all the long time to develop it, unproven technologies, and the trillions of dollars transferred daily. Forget all that. Do you know what the biggest threat to SWIFT is at the moment? It's the US government and the Iran deal. Okay? Because the US, right or wrong, doesn't matter, has said, we're pulling out of the Iran deal, therefore Iran is a sanction embargoed country, we don't want the SWIFT payments to go through. Asia, Middle East, China, Japan, Canada, etc., Australia, etc., want to keep it in SWIFT. The American government said, okay, you go and build your own SWIFT payment system. Just how long is that going to take to build a SWIFT payment system and get it in? So how is Bitcoin going to replace SWIFT payments when its biggest threat is a decision by politicians about how they want countries to interact? I'm not making any judgment politically. What I'm saying is the biggest threat to global payments is a decision by a given country on how it interacts with other countries. So let's skip through. So now, I'm going to quickly, I've got 3 minutes, quickly rattle through some issues. As the blockchains and the Bitcoins continue to grow, more records get added and added and added. Now, we currently trim blocks, manage databases, and that sort of thing. There's nothing in place to manage the growing size of the Bitcoin records and the blockchain records. The performance issues we've talked about and how they're creating a SQL meta database. The lags of information inclusion, by the time the consolidated ledger gets back out to everybody, they're trying to write code now, but there's no viable economic solution to it. Oh, by the way, proven technology exists to do this today, and it's already used. This is the one I love. The original blockchains were 1 megabyte in size. They argued for a year to make it 10 megabytes. They couldn't agree. So they just created another Bitcoin that operates on a 10 megabyte block size. Assigned an arbitrary value to it, a new set of code, and you went out there. So when you buy Bitcoin, are you buying a 1 megabyte or a 10 megabyte? So to make such a simple change as a change of file size, they argued for a year, and the only way they could get around it was to create a new currency. Do you really think the business world can operate like this? Cost of electricity to mine, we've done that one. We've done the private key management, so I'll let you do that one. You want to speculate in Bitcoin? Go right ahead. Absolutely. You've got to be prepared to write off your 10 grand. You may make a millionaire out of yourself, no issue, don't have a problem with that. All banks are avoiding Bitcoin. Why? Because of all the anti-money laundering obligations. Yep. I can go sue Macquarie Bank if it trades Bitcoin because it hasn't met its anti-money laundering obligations. Terrorism sanctions and the other stuff. Now, if all the banks went to Bitcoin, even if tomorrow everybody was on Bitcoin and the world was a nirvana, you could not manage a global run. If there was a run on Bitcoin, you could crash the entire world economy. Sorry, it's just not going to happen. Plus the cost to invest. Now, if we all went to Bitcoin tomorrow, China has for 10 years tried to get the RMB to be a petrocurrency. You know the US dollar's the petrocurrency. The Chinese government, with all its massive political clout, economy and everything else, has been lobbying for 10 years to get a government-recognised currency to be an alternative to the US dollar. It's just not going to. It's just not going to happen. All of the bonds, all of the futures, and that sort of thing. How long is it going to take for all of them to migrate into Bitcoin? I don't know. And you've got to manage the existing interest. You're Goldman Sachs, and you're America with the American dollar. What is your interest to move to Bitcoin? There's all the political vested interests, economic interests, that sort of thing. Now the Bitcoin guys love it because they say, well, we just don't need governments, we don't need all the regulations, we just bypass it, and it's a great way to do money laundering. And it absolutely is. But there's everything else that goes with it. Now, just to wrap up, if you look at the Bitcoins that are sold, they are mainly to the miners, and they're selling to themselves. Now, why are you selling a Bitcoin to yourself? Because of money laundering.
One question.
Yep, let's wrap there.
Who is this body? Who are the members of that body which said, okay, instead of 1 megabyte, it will be 10 megabytes?
It's all of the open source code users that decided to weigh in on the issue. So you know how open source software works. They have the discussion forums and they discuss it ad nauseum. And the biggest problem with Bitcoin is how are you setting a price? We have highly regulated markets and that sort of thing to set the price of oranges, to set the US dollar against the Aussie dollar and that sort of thing. And it's all done for a reason, yeah?
I was going to ask because I went to the Scottsdale Federal Reserve a couple of years ago. And the problem you got with Bitcoin apparently is the speed of transaction.
Yeah.
You know, you think about it, some people take 21 minutes. Can you imagine it? Trying to pay for something and take 21 minutes to pay?
That's one of the key bits.
Yeah.
It's this, because you have to search the entire blockchain chain record, it takes so long. Yeah. You swipe your card, they've got 12 seconds to complete the transaction. As the blockchains grow, it's taking them 2 days now to complete settlement of a 50-cent transaction in McDonald's. Forget my chess and moving 10.5 billion between banks. Yes, there is a place. I'm sure the technology is going to improve. Forget the money laundering and that side, which is its principal point at the moment. You keep coming back to it's not better than the existing technology. So why are you going to replace it? Oh, and then by the way, you've got all these other business issues that's impacting its uptake. So to wrap up, this is a nice document that paints a lovely utopian picture of what Bitcoin can potentially do. You could substitute blockchain with Oracle databases and Microsoft databases. And I could paint you the same picture. But the same business problems that we've talked about are going to be there. And just to wrap up, Agile was meant to be this nirvana that fixed all of the project management. You saw that slide, let's go back very quickly. That one, they did this survey 10 years ago. These were the problems that screwed up IT projects. They're the same ones. In that time frame, we've had SDLC, we've had Agile, we've had Extreme Agile. You guys are merging campuses. Unrealistic articulated expectations of the project. Don't I hear that somewhere in this building? Forget the poor technology, I assume that one's going to be there. Stakeholder policies, isn't that a hot button issue around the merger? So I keep coming back to, yes, blockchain has a lot of potential. Bitcoin has a lot of potential, but there are just so many pragmatic things that's going to slow down the adoption of the technology, yet alone all the nefarious bits around Bitcoin. But if you want to go wager your $5, go right ahead. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Keith.
Lots of student stuff.
Thank you, Keith. Appreciate it very much. We have a certificate of appreciation here for Keith, Professor for Day.
Okay,
So
thank you.
Thank you very much.